Local Agency Information Commission to order this November 7th. And we'll start by going over resolution, let me see. Uma, you want to just mention how public can participate real quick? And then we'll call to order and roll call.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. To participate by Zoom, for those accessing from a computer, tablet, or smartphone, the raise hand function may be selected by clicking or tapping it from the reactions options. When joining the Zoom meeting, please enter your name so that we can identify you to speak. For those utilizing the phone option, which is audio only, please use the raise hand feature by pressing *9 on your keypad to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. When it's your turn to speak, you will be called on by the last 4 digits of your phone number if available. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go with roll call now, and I believe our analyst, Feeler, will do so. Ms. Feeler?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. So we will start with you, Chair Ors.
Here.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Frohnberger.
Here.
Commissioner Roden.
Here.
Commissioner McGorty.
Here.
Commissioner Mulhern.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez. I see he's on the Zoom, but we don't appear to have audio.
He's muted at the moment. Yeah.
Commissioner Winkle. And Commissioner Haschak. And we do have a quorum. Also present are staff members, Executive Officer Uma Hinman, Analyst Larkin Filer, Clerk Kristen Meadows, and Legal Counsel Marcia Birch.
Thank you very much. And with that,
Chair, I can see Jerry's mic unmuting and muting again. I just want to give him a chance to talk for the record.
Okay.
Who are you missing?
Jerry.
He went live before we started, but I also saw the mic going off and on, so we've noted that he's present.
Thank you, Chair.
And with that, we'll go to item number 2, AB 361.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it true that we have to have a quorum in the building with this new hybrid system?
We're still operating under AB 361, and the new laws do not go into effect until March 1st of next year.
March 1st, then we have to have a quorum in the building?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
Thanks.
And Commissioner Gonzalez's video is live now. And with that, we'll go to AB 361, and I'm looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2022-2304 to allow our remote teleconferencing to continue for the next 30 days.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any questions from commissioners or staff? Any public comment? Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ignacio.
Yes.
Commissioner Roden.
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty.
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
And Chair Orth.
Yes, thank you. And with that,
I forgot one.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Frohnberger.
Okay.
I apologize. So the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, staff. And with that, we'll move to public expression. And as stated, you can star your way into this meeting or just come live up on our Zoom call, please, and indicate your desire to speak. And we'll open for public expression now. Does staff have anyone in the waiting room? Okay. We'll wait 20 seconds. It doesn't take that long to star yourself from on
10 last time.
Well, it's got a nice minute hand over there. Okay, it's been 20 seconds. There being no public expression today, we'll move to number 4, consent calendar. Do any commissioners have any item they wish to pull from our consent calendar? Commissioner Roden?
Yeah, I don't have anything that I want to pull. I just wanted to say with regard to the meeting summaries that I've always appreciated Kristen's notes and meeting summaries. And I've always felt that she captured everything that was said, and that I'm sorry that she's gone. I'll miss her quality work. That's it. And I would move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Discussion by commissioners? Any hands up in the Zoom? No? Any public wishing to speak to the item before us? Our consent calendar? I'm seeing none. No one in the waiting room, so go ahead, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger, Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Ignacio,
Yes.
and Chair Orth.
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. Today, there's no public hearing items, number 5, and we'll go right into our workshop items. 6A is a joint public workshop for the City of Ukiah and Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, draft municipal service review and sphere of influence updates, and I'll turn it over to Uma.
Thank you, Chair Orth. Our analyst, Larkin Filer, will be doing a short presentation on this item. Just as a reminder, this is our second workshop on the 2 agencies. The first was held in September and covered the municipal service reviews. This will focus on the sphere of influence update portion of those 2 agencies, with some also description of the changes made to the MSR since the last meeting. And with that, I'll hand it over to Larkin.
Thank you. And are you hosting the PowerPoint in the board chambers there?
Yes, we are. Kristen, is it up? Larkin, can you see it on your end?
I cannot. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you very much. So, as Uma mentioned, this is the second workshop, and this is for the City of Ukiah and Ukiah Valley Sanitation District draft MSR SOI updates, and the staff report for this item starts on page 25 of the packet. Please, next slide. Next slide. Oh, thank you. Oops. Okay, so, and Uma also mentioned that this is a continuation of the last workshop that was held in September. And just to reiterate from the September meeting, the city and the sanitation district studies are being presented jointly due to the interconnected nature of the provision of wastewater services. And there have been a number of revisions and additional information included in each study since the September workshop. And I did want to note that the determinations for the agencies on the city study is on page 158 of the packet and 172. And then for the district are on page 247 and 257 of the packet. Next slide, please. So as background, the city of Ukiah was incorporated in March of 1876 as a general law city. The city limits are 4.7 square miles in size. They serve a resident population of roughly 16,000 people, and it is a full-service city that provides 12 municipal services. And next slide, please. The sanitation district was initially formed in 1954 as a county-dependent district, and then was reformed in 2008 as an independent special district. The district does have a boundary of 6.62 square miles in size and includes a portion of the city limits and the greater Ukiah Valley area. The district serves a resident population of roughly 9,400, and it is a single service provider providing sewer collection services. And next slide, please. This slide shows the overlap area between the city and the district. The green areas are the district boundary, and the yellow area is the city limits. And so the overlap area, if you can see it, is on the north, south, and east side of the city limits. And next slide, please. And this slide shows the joint sewer system for the city and the district. On the left side is an aerial image showing the topography of the wastewater system. And on the right side is an overhead view of the sewer system for both of the agencies. And next slide, please. And for these agencies, they measure wastewater services through equivalent sewer service units. And that's basically equivalent to a 2-bedroom dwelling unit. And as you can see on this table, the remaining ESSUs for the agencies are 942 for the district, 434 for the city, for a total of 1,376. And next slide, please. As background on the MSR and SOI studies, an MSR is a study of a local agency's governance and operations. It includes an inventory and analysis of agency services, including service capacity, financial ability, accountability, and anticipated growth. And the MSR provides information to support the SOI or sphere. And the SOI includes the probable future boundary for an agency. Next slide, please. So the city's 2040 general plan update proposed an SOI boundary, which is recommended for the city in the study. You can see it's the pink areas on the map on this slide. And the proposed SOI encompasses territory of existing wastewater and water agencies in support of consolidation efforts. It also includes territory located west of the city limits for the Western Hills annexation proposal. Next slide, please. And for the sanitation district SOI, a coterminous sphere, which is the same as the jurisdictional boundary of the agency, is recommended for the district. The district and city have an agreement on the interim and long-term plan for the provision of wastewater services in the region. And included in this agreement is that no detachment of overlap areas or consolidation of the agencies will occur until thresholds are met. And this agreement represents a significant evolution in the relationship between the agencies and supports the financial viability of the district in the interim. And next slide, please. As far as the process, no formal action will be taken on the draft studies today. The purpose is to hold the second workshop to review, discuss, and request revisions on the draft MSR SOI updates and to welcome public comment. And then a public hearing will be scheduled for formal consideration of the final MSR SOI updates for these agencies. And next slide. And we do want to give special thanks to agency staff for their assistance in preparing these studies. For the city, we want to give special thanks to Sage Giacomo, City Manager, Craig Schlatter, Community Development Director, Jesse Davis, Chief Planning Manager, Wing C. Fox for the district, who's the interim district manager, Ernie Whip, the board chair, and Mark De Molinaire, who's the contractor for the district. And that does conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Yes, Commissioner questions, please. Commissioner Mulher.
Thank you very much. I would really appreciate having a copy of the slide deck, and perhaps it was online, but if it's not, could we upload it with the agenda packet, please?
Certainly, we'll be sure to include that. And the staff reports for the presentations for the September workshop are on the website already. So thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Matt, go ahead. Commissioner Farnberger.
Boundary for the Ukiah Valley Center. Thank you. Not sure who did that, but thank you. The coterminous boundary for the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. I see that Wing C. Fox is in the audience. I'd like to ask her, since that is a recommendation, what does the Sand District feel about that, or is that your recommendation?
Yes, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the question. We've been working, staff, as mentioned, we've been working with LAFCO and the city on the staff level, but also, as we mentioned on the last public workshop, there's been an ad hoc committee that consists of 2 city council members as well as 2 board members that have been working on the very issue of that interim services agreement. And as Uma and Larkin have mentioned, really is a milestone agreement from which a lot of these recommendations are coming forth and frankly dependent on. And so, yes, a key part of that is that with city annexations, there will not be detachment of any sewer customers from the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, whether that's in the overlap area or whether that's in future out of agency service agreement connections. And because that allows the district to remain financially whole, we are working with the city in cooperation with that plan, and still working in cooperation with the city for further plans of future consolidations should certain thresholds be met.
Okay, and if I could, with a follow-up. Does the city or the Sand District have any idea what how long it's going to take to get to the threshold points to where it makes a change? Because until that time, it's still going to be run by 2 boards, if I understand correctly.
Correct. That really, I'll turn that over to the city. It depends on their annexation of plans. And also, I mean, there's still work to be done around, if we're using the 70/70 threshold, as we mentioned in the last public workshop, the 70% land threshold seems that it would be very difficult to overcome. So if there is pursuit of special legislation, whether it's 70% voters in the city annexation or in the new city boundaries, so that is still to be worked out. But again, I'll turn over to the city in terms of their plans for annexation.
And Mr. Slaughter, I recognize you to continue the answer.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, Commissioners. Craig Slaughter, Community Development Director. Just to try to answer that question, I mean, it really is difficult to say with any level of certainty right now, but upon the adoption of the MSR and SOI, the city's next step is to submit 1 to 3 of its annexation applications that are really in a pre-application phase. I think LAFCO is aware of all of those. The Commission's aware of all of those 3. So we're going to do that probably January or February of next year, and then it's just a question of how quickly those are processed and approved. We could be at the thresholds relatively quickly, within a year to 2 years, or longer.
I have a question, Craig.
Commissioner Ward?
Why don't we wait until all the annexations are over? Why are we putting the cart before the horse?
I think that really it's not to me, I don't look at it as the cart before the horse, because the cart actually is supposed to happen first. If you want to, do it from that way of thinking. The general plan, the MSR, the SOI, those things all come before the city pursuing any type of annexation. And I think the commission has been pretty clear with the city on that point, that you'd like to see an updated sphere of influence before you see the city do any significant annexation. That's what we're attempting to do here.
What happens if annexation doesn't happen?
Then there would be no change of organization. We'd keep on going towards it, and we'd probably try to see what the commission's input would be on that, and why it wouldn't be approvable, and take it from there. Retool as needed. But our intention, the city council has been very clear with the sphere of influence that was proposed back in 2020 and now is memorialized in the city's 2040 general plan. The council's been very clear on the direction they want staff to head, so we're going to intend to go in that direction until we hear otherwise.
Go ahead, Commissioner Font. Glenn?
So if we could refer to the sphere of influence map, it's page 165, or it was in the slide deck as well, so either one. So I just have a question in general about the sphere of influence where you have hard lines. Why is this? Because it follows parcels as opposed to geographic landforms? Geographic landforms make a little bit more sense as opposed to ending something at a parcel. And I'm just curious about what's usual and customary when you are working with a sphere of influence mapping.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Please.
So for the city's proposed SOI boundary, it is a combination of different things coming to play. One is that it encompasses the existing territory of water and wastewater agencies, and those agency boundaries were established, close to 70 years ago. So it's not really known the reasons for how those boundaries were laid out at the time. In addition to those historic boundaries, there's also geographic limitations in the Ukiah Valley, both with the topography and then also, water features such as the Russian River. So there's kind of a number of things at play as far as the boundary that's been established. Is that helpful?
That helps. It's a time, though, if you're going to use this as a legacy move, that we might want to do something that's sensible as opposed to something that was done 70 years ago. And this is a time for us possibly to make a change that works better with the actual landscape, so that you're not in the situation of where, once again, one side of the street belongs to the city and one belongs to the county. It seems like you want to fill the space in logically that follows where places are buildable, where services are delivered. And I'm looking in particular at the one little finger that sticks out on the west side. Looks really peculiar, and I just don't understand why you would draw something like that and make it permanent. And it looks like it's based on parcels.
Go ahead, staff.
That is correct. The western area is based on the boundaries of a proposed Western Hills annexation area. And that area is based on land that has been acquired by the city. And so it's part of a larger open space preservation and then a designated clustered development area. So that is specifically related to a proposed annexation proposal. But that does make sense as far as if there's other areas we need to be looking at. Again, the proposed boundary is based on the city's 24 general plan update process. And so I would also welcome the city to respond if they would like to add anything.
Good morning, Jesse Davis, Chief Planning Manager. Good morning, Commissioners. I would echo the comments provided by not only LAFCO staff, but also by the Community Development Director. There are a number of factors that influence and inform the sphere of influence that's proposed here, including the water district boundaries, as well as our proposed annexation areas. I think it's important to remember that in including the proposed sphere of influence, it's difficult to review it without the context of either the topographical maps or the zoning maps or the other aspects that would really inform this. And so as to echo the comments already provided, yes, it's a combination of factors that the city feels very comfortable with. I think another aspect that needs to be informed here is the planning area itself. The sphere of influence goes in conjunction with the planning area, and the planning area is still effectively our Ukiah Valley area plan that was previously identified a number of years ago. So when you combine those factors, our proposed sphere of influence is very logical to allow for not only the annexations that are needed in the future, but also to inform the political geographies that exist on this map.
You didn't state which entity you're with. You just said Chief
Yes,
Planning.
I'm sorry. My name is Jesse Davis. I'm the Chief Planning Manager for the City of Ukiah.
City of Ukiah. Thank you.
Well, just a commentary that, the way that a lot of a more progressive thought these days is that you manage on the basis of watershed and topography. And instead we're looking at square lines, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me anymore. After all my years of working as kind of more on a watershed basis to look at the way landforms are related and how the influence of hydrology from these landforms affects the landscape and ultimately the planning and use of it. So it's just a comment. I may have a minority point of view, but it's one that I feel we should at least raise, because we're planning now that we're going to live with this probably for some length of time, and these hard boundaries don't make a lot of sense to me, especially that the west side proposed annex just looks strange.
Most definitely. Jesse Davis, Chief Planning Manager, and I would say that the SOI is just a component of what the proposed city boundaries may be. It is not the end-all, be-all of what the city's jurisdictional authority will be in the future, but it's a way to allow for us to effectively manage the political realities and the political jurisdictions that exist, particularly the water districts as well as the sanitation district, and again, encompass opportunities that may be presented. In the case of the Western Hills annexation, that is an area that the city is looking to annex primarily for preservation of open space. Another one would be, actually one that I'd like to mention to the LAFCO Commission, is the headwaters of Gibson Creek. And as you can see, there is a small area within that small parcel above the Western Hills annexation. And I would like to propose to the LAFCO Commission staff that we do include those two parcels, which are particularly APN 156-24009 and 156-24011. Now, those parcels were not included in the city-owned annexation request, in part because they are privately held parcels. And so when the city is proposing its annexation, we did not want to include at that time private parcels, because the primary purpose was to acquire the public facilities that the city already owns and operates for public benefit. So those are two parcels that I do believe should be included in our proposed sphere of influence, and were simply excluded primarily or hopefully because of a small mapping error. But again, so part of the sphere of influence is reflective of the city's intentions to annex lands that are to preserve headwaters, to preserve open space, and to ultimately make a more consolidated and effective political geography.
And I would ask the commissioners look at page 92, which is the land use diagram that's been flowing, I'd imagine, through your general plan update. And it shows the balance of uses that exist and uses of some of these parcels that is critical. The fact there's ag land, the fact there's a good mix of public use. Also on page 101 is the duck map, which all of these elements are included in the SOI. And another approach the city could take on parcels that didn't make this map is an area of interest that might be in private hands, that might be outside of this process, but in future might be rolled in an update. Yes, Commissioner Ward, and then we'll go to Mr. Slaughter.
Thank you. My questions for staff. I would like to preface this that I'm not against the annexations and I'm not against the water districts being consolidated, but does this MSR bind us to move forward in that direction if we have to. I mean, we have any choices in the future?
Absolutely. Any annexation would come before this body for approval, and that would, the commission would have the
We're agreeing to
final
their
say.
plan already, right?
This is an approval of a sphere which indicates their probable boundary, but any actual jurisdictional change must come before this body for approval first.
Including consolidation of districts.
Yes, including that.
And what about the tax sharing agreement? They don't come to an agreement for tax sharing agreements.
LAFCO processes require the tax share agreement
Right.
before we can proceed with our process. So that tax share agreement would happen between the city and the county and would be a required component for consideration of any annexations.
So that could be delayed as well, obviously, down the road. So we're making a decision today that may not happen 2, 3, 4 years down the road.
That's correct, but it does indicate that the commission would consider those annexations in the future. And there is also the potential in the future for any agency to revise their sphere of influence if there are areas that are not captured in the initial sphere update.
So we
So-
could have another go at the SOI in the future.
Correct. We look at these generally on a 5 to 10 year cycle. The planning horizon that we look at is a 10 to 20 year cycle for these sphere updates. So we are looking ahead and we are mirroring the general plan update process that the city is undertaking. I also wanted to note that the reason for the kind of jagged look of the sphere is that we do follow parcel boundaries. If those areas are annexed, they're annexed on a parcel by parcel basis and not partial parcels.
We'll go to Mr. Slaughter, then Mari, and then Commissioner Farnberger. Go ahead.
Thank you. This comment's going to be relatively brief because E.O. Hinman actually just made relatively the same comment as I was going to make is, we haven't been successful as a team, if we're looking at all of us here as a team, in completing an adoption process for the city's sphere of influence in many, many years. And so it could be easy to think, well, we get one shot at this, and then we're not going to see this for another 20 years. But really, as E.O. Hinman pointed out, these are meant to be updated every 5 to 10 years. So if it doesn't work 5 to 10 years from now, we'll be back in front of the commission talking about this again, deciding if it works or doesn't work. The other point I wanted to make, and this is very, another point I'm making a lot to members of the community, is a general plan, which is kind of outlining and aligning with all of this, is also to be a living, breathing document. It's not supposed to just be static, stuck in one point of time. And that's how we intend to look at the city's 2040 general plan in the future. How do we, is this still appropriate 2 years from now? If not, what do we need to change to make it work? Final point was there was a question, I think from Commissioner Ward, about area of interest, and the city, and I believe it's addressed in the sphere of influence, the city has proposed an area of interest outside the city's sphere of influence between the sphere of influence and the planning area. So that entire area will be an area of interest. Thank you.
And I know we've worked decades to go from an SOI that was from ridgetop to ridgetop to the point where we have the planning documents that define, I think, a valid disclosure of a potential SOI for the city and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. And with that, we'll go to Mari Roden. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it would be good, I have two things. So the first one is to give a more comprehensive response to Commissioner McGordy's comments. And what came to mind for me, and I would like staff to elaborate, is that typically, a city grows to encompass urban and municipal uses. And so, there's certain exceptions that have been made if we approve this sphere of influence that accommodates agricultural areas and open space, which is atypical for cities, but it explains really well in the MSR SOI for the city why these exceptions are being made in this case, having to do with an agricultural element in the city's general plan and its commitment to preservation of ag land and open space. But so I just felt like Commissioner McGordy's question may not have been completely answered. And so if E.O. Hinman could elaborate or feels the need to elaborate on what I said, that would be great. And then I have a few comments. So to Executive Officer Hinman.
Go ahead, Uma.
Thank you, Commissioner Roden. Those are excellent comments. And Larkin, would you like to respond?
Sure, thank you. So the agricultural preservation part of the SOI study is on page 166 of the packet. It does go through a lengthy analysis of ag preservation, and it is really important to note that the way that the city's 2040 general plan update is written to include an agricultural element is very unique. Upon adoption, the city of Ukiah will be one of the few cities in California that has this, and it really notes the intent of the city to provide ag preservation stewardship and protection in the long term. Generally speaking, SOIs do not include agricultural or open space areas, but due to the great efforts of city staff to really mirror any types of protection policies that are currently provided in the county, effectively there will be the same level, if not greater, protection of those resources through inclusion in the city's SOI. And so we are recommending that these areas which normally are not included in an urban growth boundary, we are recommending inclusion of those ag preservation areas in the city's SOI.
Thank you for that. Yes, Mari.
Yeah, I have a number of like 9 kind of very specific comments, and I don't know if I should take the commission's time to go over them or do that outside of a public meeting. What would the chair prefer? I mean, it might take 10 minutes.
Let's go to Matt and then come back to you, and you can start with your first comment, and we'll see how that goes.
Sure.
It is a workshop, so there's no problem going through this. That's why we're here.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find myself in the unique position of being also like Mari, and this discussion has actually brought up more and more questions for me. So moving to the most recent one, Mr. Schlatter mentioned that the SOI update has not been done in a very long period of time, or that we've been working on it or attempting it for. Could I get, in your humble opinion, why you think that is?
Yes, go ahead.
Sage San Giacomo, City Manager for the City of Ukiah. And again, thank you for all the work on this. I want to thank LAFCO staff for all the work, and the commission in our first hearing or workshop that we had about a month ago. And I'm going to get to Mr. Fromberger's question, but just a few precursor comments. One, what we have now is unprecedented collaboration amongst a municipality and the districts that surround that municipality. And this is really, I think, the first time in at least my history, and certainly looking back even beyond that, I'm respectful of Commissioner Ward's comments at the last meeting that this is long overdue, and before what you had is you had agencies that were basically, protecting territory. And every position and every move that was done was related to that protection of territory, as opposed to what is best for services. What services are really necessary for this area, the Ukiah Valley, to be able to prosper in the way that that we want to see it as a community prosper. And that goes into work, you know, that's related to LAFCO with the planning agencies, in this case, the city of Ukiah and the county of Mendocino, and, you know, the development of the UVAP, which has been a longstanding document that really, to Commissioner McGordy's comments, looks at more of the area as opposed to the parcels, right? Looks at the geography. That's preserved in this document, as staff has already indicated, as the planning area or area of interest. And so that was something that we heard early on. I believe it was Executive Uman who came to one of our initial meetings pre-COVID and said, hey, instead of having this really large area that's causing all of this conflict as your SOI, consider, you know, really what is the likely areas, you know, for potential annexations in the future, as opposed to just this huge geographical area. And you could accomplish this through a planning area or area of interest. We took that to heart. And that's why you now see a much more condensed you know, SOI that mirrors the areas in which municipal services are currently at some level being provided. Those areas have to be done based upon parcels. And it's not fixed, though, as it's also been indicated. If we all do our jobs and we allow these documents to evolve, which is part of the scope of LAFCO, what they do continuously is look at these plans along with the planning agencies and the districts and the services that are being provided for logical growth. They will evolve. And that's, I think, where LAFCO wants to be, as a place in which these plans that guide good services to our community evolve over time. So to Mr. Fromberger's question directly, it was because everybody was under these protectionism, you know? I mean, nobody was looking at how do we come together to make it work for our community. We now have that. You have an unprecedented agreement between the sanitation district and the city of Ukiah that calls out in these plans that, you know, we are not going to detach areas as we annex or currently as they exist now, where there's overlap of services that are being provided to our community, because it could potentially hurt those districts' viability. But we're also not going to prevent, you know, annexations of areas to occur, because that ultimately hurts the municipal jurisdictions and the municipal agencies from being able to provide a wider range of services. And so now you have agreements and you that call for that level of collaboration. You have that same concept that's now being applied to water agencies in the city of Ukiah. Again, unprecedented to have that type of discussion occurring, but it's really the discussion that should have been occurring, to Mr. Ward's point, 30 years ago or before. And now we have that. All of that collaboration comes together in these plans that LAFCO considers. And so when LAFCO is now part of this effort, and I liked what Mr. Slaughter said, this is a team effort to get the pieces in place that allow these types of plan considerations in the future. It doesn't say, yes, they're going to happen. It doesn't give LAFCO's approval that this is going to happen. It doesn't say that there's going to be even an application from the city that's going to happen. But these documents allow for that type of consideration and discussion to occur. It allows then for those annexations and those collaborations and consolidations to come before this board for consideration, which is not something we are lined up to do before. And so that was a long answer, I think, to Mr. Fromberger's question, but I hope I succinctly said it was just simply because everybody was worried about protecting their boundaries as opposed to providing adequate and necessary services to our community. And we're over that, hopefully. And that this work that LAFCO is undertaking today is a culmination of all of those efforts. You know, do we think that any of these things are perfect? No, but they will evolve. And this is the seed to cultivate that evolution.
Thank you. I thought it was better to hear somebody else tell the story rather than me.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the fact the Ukiah Valley Area Plan didn't die on the shelf, and that we are coordinating, and that we are working with the city through your general plan update process to meet the environmental CEQA aspects of this. what really, I think, brought all of this together to this point in time. So thank you.
I've got one more.
Yes, please.
Pared the rest of them down for
That's
the time
fine.
being. Mr. Ward spoke about it briefly. How would this potential, if this SOI was to eventually be adopted and the annexations were to happen, what would this do in long term to the tax sharing agreement? And then in the short term, what does this do with the negotiations that are currently going on with the county, between the county and the city and the tax sharing agreement?
I'm assuming that might be a question maybe directed towards the city or the others that are involved into this effort.
Correct. Anybody who can actually enlighten us on it.
Yeah, Sage San Giacomo City Manager for Ukiah again. So the tax sharing discussions have been happening in all earnest for the past 6 months or so. Of course, there's been other stop and stall related to tax sharing. But it is moving forward with actually all 4 municipal jurisdictions in the county. That's been, part of the efforts before have been just singular tax sharing agreements between agencies, and all 4 cities and the county have come together and said that it should be more comprehensive, similar to what Sonoma County has. That's been in place for decades now. What's good for one area is good for all areas. It requires a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors. And we're very
more to
close.
the point, this is being incorporated as a potential expectation in your discussions with the county on the tax sharing agreement.
If I could
the potential annexation, yeah.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Commissioner Muller.
I am on that ad hoc as a supervisor, and we are actively discussing what annexation and tax sharing might look. As City Manager San Giacomo stated, we're not only talking about Ukiah, we're also talking about Willits, Fort Bragg. And so during those conversations, in Point Arena, during those conversations, we are actively talking about what future annexations might look like and the impact either way to the county and the cities.
Thank you.
And I would add that the commission is very pleased that the supervisors chose to form the ad hoc to work with the cities for the tax share agreement, because it's key to moving all jurisdictions forward. So it's nice to see the work that's being put in, combined with the studies that we have before us. It makes everything available to the cities and the county to move our communities forward. So thank you. Yes.
So
Commissioner
Mo, is it the opinion of the board then that the Masonite property will probably there'll be a tax sharing agreement between the city and the county? Because you're talking about a lot of revenue there.
Well, so what we're talking about is a master tax sharing agreement that would work for any municipality. And then what would happen is when it would come to LAFCO, that all would be laid out as far as revenue, costs, and reduction of liabilities on the county's end. So we are actively talking about what the proposed SOI would look like.
Well, that's good news, because it wasn't like that in the past.
Yeah. Well, I think, sorry, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to say, so the tax share agreement will be a template, but you'll still have individual review of each annexation and tax share.
Well,
but you'll have a template to launch from.
that's the intention, is to have something that'll work countywide. And then each individual annexation would come back before LAFCO and the board for review and consideration. So again, it's not just Ukiah, it's certainly not just Masonite. We're talking about Willits and Fort Bragg as well. So there's potential for multiple jurisdictions.
Go ahead.
And if I could just add that any annexation that comes before LAFCO has to be, one of the main documents that has to be provided is the plan for services. And the plan for services would outline how those services are going to be transferred, provided, and the revenues and other resources that are going to be necessary in providing for that annexation. So it will be specific to any annexation that's proposed, but the tax sharing agreement itself, as Commissioner Supervisor Mulhern has indicated, is more comprehensive for all cities. What we don't want to see is that's been one of the linchpins that have held up annexations, in addition to MSRs and SOIs and collaboration with districts. We don't want to see that perpetuated in other communities like Willits and Fort Bragg and Point Arena. But I often say that Willits and Fort Bragg are probably just 20 to 30 years behind where the city of Ukiah is today, and that if we don't take care of these efforts now, we're going to be dealing with all the pressures and the problems that we have in the Ukiah Valley in and around those other municipal areas as well. So, this will have a net positive impact for our entire county, these efforts that we're taking on right now, even though they're very much, they're well beyond overdue in the Ukiah Valley.
How is the city, through the general plan process, incorporating the state law changes that so affect the way development can happen within your borders?
Jesse Davis, City of Ukiah Chief Planning Manager. I'd say it's central to our general plan, especially with regard to SB 9 and accessory dwelling units. The city is really looking towards infill as a primary component of how we will address the myriad of state laws that are from everything from housing to water to municipal waste. So those components are intimately baked into the various elements that the city has.
So that would include the fact that now commercial areas can also go residential mixed use for those areas within the plan.
Yeah, so thank you, Jesse Davis. The city recognizes and already has allowances for multifamily housing within our commercial areas, and those state laws that were recently passed to allow for affordable housing in vacant, underutilized commercial properties is something the city is already capable of doing. For example, the city's objective design standards allow for commercial properties to be developed by right, and those include commercial areas. And another point I would make is that the density allowances in our commercial zoned areas are very much in line with a medium or high density zoning for residential uses. So very much so, infill development very much reflects not only state law, but also our intent to develop housing and other mixed use developments.
And that, of course, flowed right into your SOI document today.
Yeah, most definitely.
And Mari, I'm not forgetting you. Go ahead, Mr. Swan.
Just to add on to that point, Craig Schlatter, Community Development Director, City of Ukiah, there is a tremendous amount of state legislation coming down that all, including the county, have to follow and adhere to. I think one thing the city is trying to accomplish through its sphere of influence is to retain as much local control as possible. So I'm going to go back to, it's actually something that was in the 1974 Ukiah General Plan, repeated in 84, repeated in the UVAP. It said, we see that, these are the people of that time talking. We see this community as Ukiah and its valley. So how do we achieve that? Well, we have these stark differences between Ukiah and the unincorporated valley. That's not really achieving that view, that vision that they set all the way back in 74. So as this legislation comes down, we all have to kind of deal with it. The city still wants to retain that local control. So for example, we can have that consistency of design, require such things as connectivity into our pedestrian bicycle networks, encourage more like development in and around the city of Ukiah. So we're trying to achieve that vision. And then as well, protect all of those green space, open space, agricultural areas by having a very intentional ag element. I think E.O. Hinman said, one of a few cities in the state of California to do this. So that's really our vision for what we're headed in here.
Yes, the valley does hold a lot of critical soils. So And Mari, we'll go back to you now.
Thanks. So this was a really long MSR SOI, and I finally got a chance to go through it. And I first want to say that it's fantastic. It's so comprehensive, and it's well written. It's comprehensive, and yet each section is concise. And so it's really easy to read, and I just want to commend staff for that. It also, in the determinations, I appreciated the kind of admonitions or recommendations, like, for example, where the city of Ukiah is short on police officers, and the LAFCO Commission needs to take that into account when the city comes forward and makes an application for annexation. It's gonna, it's why we have MSRs. We look and see what is the capacity of a city, and in this case, it would be Ukiah, to annex territory if it's short of police officers. And it's the same with looking at the fire district. Are there enough? Well, there aren't enough firefighters at this point to have the recommended, staffing. So anyway, I think that it's really serving its purpose, this MSR. But then I had some specific things. So the first one is on page 214, 2-14, and it's table 2.3 of the City Council. And I just want to make a correction about my own status here. The first year of service for me in this term is 2021 is when I was appointed to the City Council. And the expiration is correct, but it's where the column serving consecutive terms should say no. So that's the first one. So on page 2.23, did staff catch that? What I said, can I go on?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
It talks in somewhere in here about mutual aid.
She's referring to the electronic document.
PDF, page 43.
Yeah, the electronic document. I'm having trouble finding it.
Can we refer to page something of 281, please, for everyone to follow along?
Yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have. Oh, I see. So it'd be 25 of 171, maybe? I'm not sure. I'm looking at it online. Oh yeah, shared service delivery. So I guess it goes on to 223. Mutual aid agreements. Yeah, it's in section 2.3.3.2, and it doesn't.
Which is on, just for everyone, that's on page 217.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, I'm suggesting that we mention that we have a mutual aid agreement with the county in here for public safety, for police. And I didn't see it. At the bottom of that same page, under contractor JPA services, it says in the second sentence, the JPA outlined terms for jointly managing, equipping, maintaining, and operating all risk, fire, medical, and emergency services, et cetera. And I'm curious why staff put all risk. I don't know what that means, and I don't know if other readers know what it means. So I don't know why it's there. So it's a question to staff.
Mr. Chair, can I respond?
Please do.
This is some carryover language from the Ukiah Valley Fire District MSR study. And I believe all risk just refers to that they respond to all types of calls for service. So, city staff may be able to respond a little more clearly, but some fire agencies only respond to certain types of calls, whereas the Ukiah Valley Fire Authority responds to all levels of risk associated with emergency needs.
I'm not there, so I can't see if staff has anything to add, city staff that is. But I think that if we don't know what it means, then we should explain that, analyst filer just putting, maybe changing the terms to all types of fire, medical, or something. I just like things to be able to be understood by people reading it.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, thank you. Jesse Davis, City of Ukiah. Staff affirms LAFCO's response to that question. The UVFA responds to all emergency calls for service, and that is what all risk entails. It's also carryover language from the previous 2018 UVFA MSR document.
We do have definition section. We could always put all risk in the definition section as a reference.
We can clarify that, yes.
I think clarifying it in the body would be helpful for people reading it. I have really minor things. I feel like I don't want to take up everyone's time.
Yes, written comments will certainly be flow forward out of the
I'll
workshop.
just contact staff. But I do have a question about, this is a general question about a proposed development at the south end of town called Gardens Gate. And I'm curious, that's in the city's area of interest? I think it is in the city's area of interest. And how will that development be handled in terms of services? And I guess it's a question to city staff.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Jesse Davis, City of Ukiah. So the Bella Vista project is within the city's sphere of influence, and it is currently a project that is reviewed by the County of Mendocino. Services for that project will be evaluated when the Planning Commission takes that project on for its evaluation of which would be a modification to the existing tentative map. Bella Vista is a project that was previously approved approximately 10 years ago, I believe, at this stage. So services will be understood and defined as part of that application that's reviewed by the County Planning Commission. The city would be a responsible agency in the sense that we would provide response and comment as that project is evaluated upon public review.
For those that don't have the map in front of them, could we just give a brief statement as to where that is? Bella Vista.
Yeah, so Bella Vista is just south of Gobelay Lane on the south side of Ukiah. It's within the Willow Water District currently along South State Street. It's somewhat tangential to Plant Road, which accesses the city's solid waste facilities. But it is currently, again, south of the city limits, just south of Gobelay Lane in particular.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, further commissioner comments, questions?
Go ahead.
Yes, Glenn.
So I appreciate the answer about how annexation is done, parcel by parcel. And reading through this, I don't see any discussions of groundwater, which concerns me because we have Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and Ukiah is quite dependent on groundwater, and there are new laws and movements by the state water resources agencies to oversee its use and guarantee its sustainability, which could affect future development. I think of ridge to ridge as actually a smart way of looking at our region, because we're inside of a watershed that has 162 different little tributaries, all of which have surface groundwater interfaces that could be regulated by the National Marine Fisheries Service, Cal Fish and Wildlife, and they're starting to really bring it up as issues. And I see this as something that has to be addressed at some point, because there could be limitations on land use in some of these areas that probably have ecological significance for recharge of groundwater, and not to try to destroy everything at a late date, but we have to at least acknowledge that this is something that's important to future land use in the region. I really appreciate that you have an agricultural land use element. We should probably also have some watershed elements. When I think about the annexation, a lot of people are going, why would you annex that? And one of the things I can think about is that the city of Ukiah could then control some of its watersheds that are important in recharge for groundwater, which would be the Doolin Creek area as an example. So I just bring that up. Certainly, maybe in this go-around we don't worry about it, but you also are, the city of Ukiah is part of the Joint Powers Authority that makes up the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. It's not acknowledged in your report. You should probably say something.
And I would just say quickly that originally there was an SOI proposed. It was ridgetop to ridgetop, which followed the watershed concept. And I think the pushback was pretty extensive that we needed a much higher level of planning, which these documents represent. However, that said, I think you're correct. We need to note the groundwater agency that exists to respond to state mandates. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Jesse Davis, City of Ukiah. And Supervisor McGordy, that's an excellent point. I do want to bring your attention to page 3-117 within the city's municipal service review. On that page in section 3.14.1.3, the groundwater sustainability plan is addressed as a component of this municipal service review. One of the ways this municipal service review was developed was it looked at existing and recently completed documents, and in this case it's the Ukiah Urban Water Management Plan that particularly addresses not only the groundwater sustainability aspects, but also recent laws such as SGMA as a component of our ability to address those concerns. And this is similar throughout the document, not just with regards to water, but for example, with airport land use considerations, the city cites its most recent documentation that supports that. And with regards to water considerations, the city staff was very careful in its review and evaluation of the draft documents provided by LAFCO and consulted closely with our Water Resources Director, Sean White, to ensure their appropriateness and applicability.
Don't you have a question for Mr. Davis?
So just to finish up, that I'm sorry that I haven't read everything, so I missed that part. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Of course.
Mr. Davis, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is there any residential areas that is being serviced by the water districts that's not in the SOI?
To the best of my knowledge, none in particular. There are aspects of the Willow Water District that are south of the SOI and planning area. However, those areas are primarily agricultural, and there are limited customers, if any, that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the residential areas. So.
No, the staff was staff was very careful to ensure that the water districts that were serviced with residential customers were included within the SOI, particularly with regards to Willow and Millview.
How about commercial?
Commercial customers as well. Again, our overlap was very specific and pointed to ensure that customers were addressed and that no one would be left behind.
Okay. One more question. Somewhere in here, and I'm sorry, I'm like Glenn, I haven't read the whole, I read it, but it's too many pages. There was a build-out that you predicted for these annexation areas as well as the city. It was a couple 1,000 units or something. Do you remember the build-out? I should have marked it last night when I read this, but
I believe you might be referencing the general plan build-out with regards to the city's upcoming general plan.
Okay. Wait. Do you remember how many units you were going to be building out? Off the top of your head?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's, so just to back up a little bit too, for the EIR, there are conservative estimates of build-out projections. That's like if there was, trying to say this in a way, with CEQA and everything, if there are no barriers or nothing standing in the way and you could just build wherever you wanted to, the maximum build out would be this X number. That realistically is not going to happen, but it's for EIR conservative estimates purposes.
But the Western Hills, you're predicting 14 parcels possibly could be built out, probably in the near future.
Yeah, so part is the Western Hills annexation agreement, the application proposal, excuse me. There is a development agreement that's associated with that, which would allow for approximately 7 units to be constructed, in addition to the preservation of those, of that open space. And then in section 2.5, the growth section of our municipal service review on page 2-58, that might be the section you're referring to with regards to growth and community profile. And it gives an overview of the city's existing and proposed land use that would allow for development to occur. As I stated earlier, I believe that the city's intention is to utilize existing state law as well as our programmatic approach to things like objective design development standards to allow for infill development. So really, the city's intention is to develop inward and upward.
And I find that, I think there's a lot of requirements for housing, low-income housing, et cetera. But I find it pretty interesting that your population only goes up 400 people in the next 5 years. That's pretty low.
So to respond, that is a basis of, and population was something that was discussed heavily between LAFCO staff and city staff, and that's looking at existing trends and conditions to evaluate what percentage would be appropriate for population increase. And as we see, there is fewer sort of families that are getting larger and not as much net migration. So as a result, the city's population has remained fairly stagnant for a number of years now, which gives us a population increase percentage of around 1%.
Yeah, all those on Brush Street, there's quite a few residents in that area, I would think, that newly developed. And we've been at 16,000 for a long, long time.
And the developments you cite on Brush Street are technically within the unincorporated area. So the city was very much only looking at its incorporated jurisdiction with regards to population increase.
So your population will go up through annexation then?
Yes.
I do have more, but if somebody else wants to speak, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Farnberger.
Would it be fair to say that that build-out would be mostly driven by available ESSUs within the city and sand district? Because the city has, I mean, it wouldn't be water-driven because the city's got a very underutilized water right. But the ability to treat wastewater and to serve wastewater to new developments is I don't want to say compromise, but isn't that the limiting factor?
I would say that Jesse Davis, Chief Planning Manager, City of Ukiah. I would say there are a number of considerations and limiting factors, including the cost of construction, available land. Again, one of the tools that we really see to address our needed for housing is going to be through accessory dwellings and infill development, and that would allow for minimal impact to the ESSUs that you're citing. Again, I think it's a combination of factors that really restrict housing, and increasingly it's going to be interest rates and the cost of building. I would defer to the Sand District as well as other city staff to speak to the other limitations regarding sewer, but in my opinion, construction costs are going to be one of the barriers moving forward.
Yeah, just at this time, the sanitation district in the city on the sewer operations, we would be, looking and forecasting additional needs in the future. Currently, part of the redesign and upgrades at the sewer waste treatment plant, the addition of recycled water, there's a lot of resiliency that's been built into the system. We have currently, we have plenty of ESSU as it stands currently today, but it doesn't necessarily preclude the plant from additional development, design, and operational efficiencies that couldn't be looked at, whether or not we get close to that ESSU capacity or not. But at this time, it doesn't make fiscal sense to add ESSU capacity when it's simply not needed, even with projected growth at this time.
And I'll recognize General Manager Wincey. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to agree and second what Sage just said. Is right now we have plenty of capacity, and we will be bringing forth in the next month an out-of-area service agreement applications, and we can talk through a little bit more at that time how the agreement between the city and the district would work. But combined with the city and the district, we do have plenty of capacity in the moment.
And if I may add one more thing, please.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Another aspect of ensuring that we have adequate services is, for example, the city's annexation application for city-owned properties. Some of the properties included in that annexation request include territories both north and south of the existing wastewater treatment plant. And so that is a component of our approach to ensuring that the city has adequate services or the capability to provide adequate services when needed. By annexing those city properties that are being utilized for public benefit, we're going to ensure that as the city grows and as those needs evolve, we will have the capacity and the area of land appropriate to utilize for that infrastructure.
A follow-on question, does recycling affect the treatment capacities at the sewer plant in the future?
It impacts our ability to discharge. Before, when we were having to meet the requirements of discharge, which could be a limiting factor based upon where you're discharging, especially into the Russian River, where those regulations are increasingly becoming more and more stringent, that we currently don't discharge anymore. So those limiting factors that we have of discharge into the river aren't limiting anymore because of the recycled water operations. Then also just to point out, to what Mr. Davis said, the city and the sanitation district, have looked at as properties adjacent to the plant have become available and become onto the market. We've planned ahead, so we've actually have more than enough property surrounding the treatment plant for additional growth in the future. I was also talking just briefly with Director Wiff of the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District in between questions. The work that we're doing on the collection system itself is also improving our capacity in the sense that we don't have as much water intrusion into those old pipes. So when we're upgrading the system and putting new collection pipes in, you don't have the water intrusion into the system and having to treat that, which then limits overall capacity for use. So all of those things have contributed significantly to building a much more resilient sewer system for our community.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up on the screen.
I have a couple more.
I see. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Ward.
Okay, thank you. Looking back at the 2014 UMA, there was determinations made then. Is there any difference, or is anything that was made in 2014 as a determination that we need to discuss today?
Thank you for that question. We do review the previous determinations when we're preparing an MSR sphere update, so I'll ask Larkin to address.
Go ahead, Larkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing is coming to mind, but I'd be happy to look into that and speak to it more at the public hearing if that's okay, or I could follow up with you individually.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, this is a pretty good document. I mean, it's one that we keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think the city of Ukiah should be very proud of it, how much effort put into this. How much came from the actual city staff versus our staff, though?
This was a collaboration between our agencies. There was a lot of back and forth on the information and the document itself. A significant portion of it came from the general plan update, which makes for better planning documents all around to coordinate these two long-term planning efforts. So we were able to capitalize on that effort that the city has undertaken for their update, and are very grateful to city staff for all of their assistance in pulling this document together.
I guess a question for City Manager Sangiacomo. The Ukiah area, or the general plan, you've gone through several meetings on this general plan?
Yes, and I see Director
Now,
Slaughter coming up as well. The answer to that is yes.
Okay. Did you have any controversies from the public?
Well, I'll just speak briefly, and Mr. Slaughter could get into detail if you want. It's been a community process, so as the process started a number of years ago, there's been community input that's informed and advised how that plan has developed. I won't call them necessarily controversial items, but there's been good deliberative discussion related to items. A general plan is supposed to represent the community and the community's vision for Ukiah and the Ukiah Valley. And I think it went through a diligent planning process to achieve the document that we see before us, that will be going before the City Council.
Well, considering there's nobody here clamoring with us from the public, I guess your answer is correct. But we will have a public hearing next month on this document. We're not going to expect any crowds coming in and complaining about anything on this document.
On the MSRs and SOIs, no, I'm not
Okay.
I'm not anticipating that. There's been very frank, open discussions through it. LAFCO's gone through a due diligence period that will, at the end of the day, include 3 public workshops. But it's been informed even prior to that, in discussions on MSRs and SOIs. Part of kind of the old way of thinking that was leading to what I addressed with Mr. Frohnberger's question, that there was, efforts of districts in the city to block certain things all the way along, that we don't have that because of the collaboration and the efforts that are going and what these plans represent in the work of the districts in the city to get to this point, along with LAFCO and LAFCO staff. As you know, and you've received updates actually from LAFCO staff, that there's been ongoing administrative meetings and staff meetings and ad hoc meetings that have all worked to inform and get us to, impart some of the documents that you see before you today. The other thing that I want to point out on this MSR, to the question that was just asked about how it developed and the information that went in to inform it, it was the Ukiah Valley Area Plan. It was the MSR with the Ukiah Valley Fire District that this board approved. It's the groundwater sustainability work. All of this work that has not been necessarily done specifically as a result of the MSR comes together to inform the commission. And so it's very much a comprehensive document and a comprehensive look based upon all of the studies that have preceded this to help inform and provide a document that is comprehensive for what LAFCO will be using this for moving forward, which will be considering, potential annexations, consolidations, and that information this board needs and the community needs to provide informed decisions related to those hopefully upcoming decision points that will be before this commission.
Well, all our previous MSRs that I recall were coterminous with SOIs. This one isn't. So I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I just know that there's a lot of grumbling out there maybe about these future annexations and consolidations. So
Yeah,
I don't want to be, fired out of here in the next few meetings.
in fact, the city of Ukiah was not coterminous, right? It included a huge area of ridgetop to ridgetop, and that was in part what was causing a lot of the protectionisms and stuff to kind of arise and boil up to the top. And there wasn't good communication between, the city and our other district partners and the county and providing services to get to more of a comprehensive view of service provisions for our communities moving forward in a collaborative way. And
Are you saying it was developed in 2014 as ridgetop to ridgetop? I
No.
think it was prior to that.
Oh, yeah, no, I wasn't saying 2014.
Okay,
It was
okay.
definitely
It's
much
been there a
before
long
that.
time.
A long time, and I think that's part of what led to the dysfunction, for lack of better words, of of provision of services and the discussions that really need to take place or needed to have taken place between service providers in the Ukiah Valley. So this is a long-standing issue. This is why we haven't had, really any annexation since the 80s, and even then very limited in scope and term. But this document, unlike the 2014 MSR for the city of Ukiah, is informed from all of these other planning efforts and analysis and work that has been taken on by the county and specialty groups like the groundwater sustainability efforts. It now is all informed as part of this document, which it should be. That's what LAFCO will need in order to make informed decisions as it moves forward. The previous documents, I would say, lacked some of that connectivity and fabric that provided the information for decision makers.
And I would say the ridgetop to ridgetop proposal is what directly led to, in the controversy of that, led to the Ukiah Valley area plan being developed in the first place. And why LAFCO stood back for so long because of controversies. And so I'm so pleased to see that plan has survived and moved forward to lead to this day today. So.
I don't recall being a controversy in 2014, though. I was here.
I wasn't here.
I was here, and I don't remember any controversy.
I'll just to that directly,
Yes.
while the controversy might not have been played out here in front of LAFCO, I wasn't city manager at the time. I was, I think, an assistant city manager at the time. I could assure you there was lots of controversy that was taking place. There was lots of, efforts by the city, and other agencies, that weren't working collaboratively together in the efforts and the provisions of services. That process in 2014, even in front of LAFCO to get to an MSR, it went back and forth between consultants, staff doing the work, and there was, the city blocking efforts at the time for certain levels of MSR work that was taking place right here in front of LAFCO. So there was probably, litigation that resulted because of, not having this type of collaboration and documents in place. So while it wasn't necessarily being played out right in front of LAFCO, the undercurrent was significant and strong related to the dysfunction.
We're not there today. Yes, Mr. Slot.
Really brief comment, just to zoom way out on what City Manager St. Jacobo had mentioned. I mean, really what we've done here, and we meeting, I think the team, again, over the last couple of years is a concerted effort to take down the picket fences that have arisen over the last few years, the last several years. And really what we have as a result is a community-driven document. So, if we think about even the general plan itself, going back to 2019 when we started, it's 100% driven by the community. And that's why we don't necessarily expect any major controversy at the end here, because we've already collected all of that input and it's driven what the very elements say, what the language says in the document. And in turn, all that community input is now part of this process as well. So, and that's really how planning documents are supposed to be. We've gotten used to, I think, unfortunately, kind of a more top-down approach to planning, where there's, kind of one person or a group of staff that kind of make this plan, and that's the plan forever. And it really is not supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be a community-driven, led event that is constantly being updated and looked at again. Does this still work for our community 2 years later, 3 years later? And so I think for me as a planner, that's pretty exciting to see all of this come together, a very collaborative, community-driven effort resulting in what you have in front of you today.
Ernie, I see you're in the audience. Would you, this is a joint workshop including the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. Would you like to speak to your part in the process? Are you satisfied with where we are today?
Ernie Whiff, the chair of the Sanitation District. And yeah, I think that we've worked out a pretty good agreement. I believe that it will make it for smooth for this transition. There's still kinks, but I think we'll iron those out as we go. The triggers of what would make the Sand District a subsidiary district or absorbed by the city. You know, it makes sense to combine the entities. You know, the district was created to serve outside the city limits. I don't know if that was the most efficient way now that we've got to where we are now. You know, we have a lot of duplicity in staff, and it's the best method forward, I believe.
Question for Ernie.
Ernie,
how long do you think it'll take to consolidate or become a subsidiary, or whatever direction you guys are going?
Well, if you went by the, I don't know, that's probably a question for these fellows, but I think if you went by the population data and the number of customers that would be within the city limits if they went from Masonite Road to 253, I think that takes, you're about halfway there. So, I guess it's gonna take quite a while for, it really depends on the development, you know, I don't.
What I'm confused in is what the end result will look like. Will there be a sand district anymore? Will it all be the city of Ukiah? It's a little confusing for me to understand.
The way that we have it agreed on now is that there'll be a sand district operated basically the way it is now, up till a point where there's 70% of the customers lie within the city limits. And, you know, I would say if they annex that area I just mentioned, it'd be about 50% of the district customers. So how long would it take to achieve 20% more in that annexed area? You know, at 1% growth, it's going to take a while.
Well, why not just change now? Why not just dissolve the sand district and have the city take it over?
Because of the rules that require that the city serve within their city limits.
Okay.
That's why the sand district was created originally, because the city couldn't serve outside the city limits.
So as you reduce your service units, what about your debt? Your debt, does the debt go down too?
In our agreement, all the customers will remain district customers until that 70% trigger is hit, which at that point, by the time we hit that, I think the debt will be taken care of. That's kind of my viewpoint, but maybe I'm, you know me, I'm a little bit.
I don't think I'll be around either when that debt's paid off.
Yeah, so.
Thank you, Ernie. Yes.
I just want to, the agreements and the plans, the nice thing about this, it allows for all the interim provisions of services to be done the best that we could do with all the agencies involved. And it allows for that efficiency and consolidation to be considered when it becomes appropriate to do so. Under LAFCO, you know, Cortese-Knox thresholds or special legislation when and if the time becomes important. So the agreements and what we're talking about will work today better than they've ever worked before, and in the future will work and evolve to being something better. So we've solved both an interim issue and a long-term issue. No longer will the decisions be made, you know, by agencies to, you know, to block or hold up, you know, potential evolution because we're afraid of jurisdictional boundaries. So it allows for everything to move forward. The logjam that we've experienced for the past 4 decades, you know, and counting, we're breaking through that with the provision of better services in the interim, which could last an extended period of time. A lot will be determined by this LAFCO, you know, will be determined by LAFCO depending on the plans and tax sharing and everything else coming together. But the provisions as they line out today under this are better off than we are, you know, yesterday, if this moves forward.
And as a commission, I can say that we're very pleased, I am very pleased that this is laying out a logical development process moving forward with these documents. So that's really what LAFCO is here for, to ensure that that occurs. And I do believe we've come some strides forward here today in this workshop. And I'll let you mute before
I believe Wing C has a question.
yes, please.
Lindsay.
Yes, Wincy.
Thank you. Just actually a quick statement that I want to acknowledge that all parties were referring to cooperation, but the level of cooperation runs really deep among all three agencies. I think everybody is working under sort of a new set of rules and making compromises for the greater good. So just an example of going through this MSR SOI process when working with the city and this landmark agreement that the city and the district have come to so that the city can proceed, as Sage mentioned, with annexation plans, but the Sand District can be assured of its financial viability, its ability to meet coverage covenants and pay its debt service as well as its costs. And I think in working also with LAFCO, there are some exceptions that are being made and also, extending support for this cooperation. I think, we did discuss, would LAFCO be recommending a reduced sphere for the district? If, truly you're wanting to look at, okay, the district agrees and in the future we're going to consolidate with the city, why would our sphere include the overlap area? And we had a very honest discussion about kind of the optics of that and where we're headed, and maybe a reduced, going from a sphere for the district that matched the cities to a reduced sphere that didn't even include the overlap area might be too large of a step. And so I think we agree that this is a good compromise in maintaining our coterminous sphere, but also just acknowledging all the true cooperation that's been occurring.
Thank you. Matt, did you have another?
Yeah, thank you. So I can speak from some experience that people do not like bureaucracies, and they certainly don't like two-headed bureaucracies or three-headed bureaucracies. But sometimes it's important to have more than one group of control because different places and different groups have different special interests and needs. I'm encouraged by the movement so far between the two agencies and the taking of the information from all the different groups. As long as this continues the way that it is, I see this as being beneficial because, once again, two bureaucracies to run a single thing is just it's hard to reconcile in my head. I don't like it. I think it's wasteful. So, but I do appreciate the work that's been done so far and the fact that everybody's been able to move forward instead of sideways, and instead of building silos, they're building bridges.
Commissioner Warden, then we'll open it up for any public comments that might be out there.
Just had a few comments on the MSR, the way it's written, and maybe you can help me out. On page, let me think here, 135 of 281 in our packet, you talk about the transfer station, the Ukiah transfer station. I don't really read a lot about the other stuff, but being in the business, I tend to read those a little bit more. I understand from the income statement, the landfill loses money every year, and it's quite expensive project. But for interest of transparency, I believe there's a surcharge on the tipping rate for the support of the landfill. I'm not sure the dollar amount. Maybe city manager may know, but I think it just needs to know that the residents of Ukiah or whoever's using the transfer station is also supporting the closure of the landfill. The other item is I have a hard time following their financials where they have the beginning net positions and then they go into their net position on their balance sheet. Basically, just doesn't flow. Maybe it'd be best if I write my question to you in the future rather than waste the time today. And lastly, if I could, this annexation talks about the Western Hills, Brush Street, and some of the others on page 95. I believe we probably should say that the city has interest in doing all that, but it's pending any tax sharing agreement and pending LAFCO approval. So the reader doesn't know, just knows that it's not a done deal. There still has to be some issues taken care of before it can actually happen. So other than that, I did read it. It's a lot of work. I appreciate the effort that you and city staff put into it. It's an excellent document. I think the city and the residents that read it should be very happy with how it's laid out. So it's a lot of work, and I appreciate it.
We'll look for any public comments at this time. Anyone on the board who wishes to raise their hand, or anyone in any waiting room? I don't believe there is. Do we have anyone in the waiting room? Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone come forward for public comment. So I believe we need to schedule a public hearing. Will we handle, yes? Oh, Matt, yes.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. One last thing did occur to me, is the electric utility. The city currently owns their own electric utility, and I just reread the section, and there's no mention of PG&E and their service provisions within the area that's potentially to be annexed. Are they part of the conversation yet, or is that a down the road?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So if we were to annex area that is currently being served by PG&E, it wouldn't prevent the annexation in the LAFCO process from happening, but it would affect the plan for services for that area. There does have to be a negotiation between the City of Ukiah Electric Agency and PG&E for the assumption of those electric services, which may or may not happen at the time of annexation or those annexation applications, but in the plan for services would be pointed to that in the future could be served by the city electricity or electric utility if an agreement is reached between city and PG&E. I will say we do believe it's in our best interest to provide that type of service. In the Ukiah Valley, currently, City of Ukiah rates are about 30% cheaper than PG&E, and we don't have, share and portions of revenue that go to shareholders, so the cost and the efficiency of the city being able to provide those services we do feel is superior, and it would be something that we'd be very much interested in doing as we annex, but it doesn't have to be a hold up to annexation considerations, but does require agreement between the city's electric utility and PG&E when we do take over those types of services. There is the option of the city still, even if PG&E doesn't necessarily provide consensus for service of those customers, it doesn't mean or prevent the city from building out its infrastructure to provide services to customers. So it's in everybody's best interest to get to agreements, and we'll be seeking those types of agreements in the future.
Thank you.
Good question. And with that, I believe we're ending our workshop. And to do so, I see we need to schedule a public hearing, but also we're going to be talking about our next meeting. So in a sense, right now, we're just basically saying we'll schedule the public hearing to the next LAFCO meeting as agreed to later in our agenda.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any final comments by anyone here today that wishes to speak before we close the workshop? By staff or any others?
I just really want to thank Wing C, Fox in particular, as well as Mr. Whip for all of their assistance with the sanitation district. We did focus a lot on the city today, and we did talk about the team there and the relationship that we have built in development of this MSR sphere update. And I want to also say that we held the same amount of coordination and collaboration with the sanitation district. And that was also continued between the sanitation district and the city. So it was, the team really was all three agencies, LAFCO, the sanitation district, and the city. And just grateful that we could bring it forward with, without the level of controversy and with the high level of coordination. Thank you.
And I was pleased not to have a meeting last month to allow you to get all this work done on a timely basis.
Thank you for that allowance.
Okay, so we're closing the public hearing at this time. Excuse me, the workshop item. And we'll move to number 7, matters for discussion and possible action. After a 5-minute break.
Studies are subject to CEQA, and we'll be relying on the city's general plan EIR for adoption of our proposed sphere as well. So we've been working with the City of Ukiah and the Sanitation District to align consideration of the sphere updates for both agencies with the City Council's consideration of their 2040 general plan final EIR. They are tentatively scheduled to consider that on December 7th. So and our next regularly scheduled meeting is December 5th. So to align better with their schedule for considering the EIR, we're recommending or suggesting that we move our December 5th meeting to the following Monday, which is December 12th. We'd also like to request a tentative schedule for a special meeting should the City Council continue or defer their decision on the EIR to their December 21st meeting. We'd like to schedule a special meeting for the last week of December, focusing on December 28th or 29th. That special meeting would not be necessary if the city does go ahead and certify their EIR at the December 7th meeting. So that we could consider the SOI at December 12th.
So at this time, we'll discuss whether we'll go for the 28th or 29th as a secondary potential meeting date. Would we meet on the 12th no matter what for normal business and then have the special meeting to coalesce around if there's that delay, or will we just cancel the 12th meeting to the 28th or 29th if that's needed?
I suppose if there's nothing else on the agenda of substance that we could wait until the next meeting and not hold the December 12th meeting. But I think at this time what we'd like to do is reschedule the 5th to the 12th.
Okay.
And then have the backup date as a special meeting for the 28th and or 29th.
Can we do that on the 12th because of the noticing time period?
Yes, we will have time.
Okay. And Glenn?
So we may have a conflict with the Public Safety and Health Advisory Board for the county, because that's a scheduled meeting, I think. I'm just checking. You're looking at the calendar. Okay. So I'm not sure if we're meeting or not. I can find out from the clerk of the board and get back to you.
Is that on the 12th?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the morning, not
Yes.
the afternoon?
It's the morning.
Is it possible that the chamber is available in the afternoon?
Yes.
No.
No?
Yes, no?
Public health and safety meets in the morning on the 12th, and general government meets in the afternoon on the 12th.
Okay, okay.
So is there anything precluding pushing it back even to the beginning of January? Or does this have to be done prior to the end of the calendar?
The intent in
Because I mean, that last week of December, let's just be frank, it's very difficult to get people to show up to a meeting.
Yeah.
It is difficult. Our intention was to work with the boards who are in place at this time, specifically since we have gone through the workshops with this commission, and the change in commission would require
Because of change of seats.
yes, the change of seats, correct.
Uh-huh.
That's a fair statement, thank you.
Is the third Monday open at the county?
December the 19th?
19th?
So December the 19th?
I believe that will work, provide, that's if the city council considers and certifies the EIR on the 7th, that should work. Larkin, do you have any conflict?
Works well, thank you.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Commissioner Ignacio here. Is there a reason why it has to be on a Monday? I mean, I agree with what E.O. Hinman suggests, that the existing commission as it stands right now would be good to finish this out. Is there other days of the week that are compatible for this process?
I'm not sure.
I think we would need to check with the county regarding the board chambers availability on other days of the week. We can certainly do that.
But we need to draw a conclusion today, don't we?
Staff would need direction as far as when to, as publishing or the setting the public hearing date. Is that, Larkin, is that something that we could do and then reach out to the commission?
I believe we're looking for direction to reschedule the regular meeting, which I think we would need to decide today. Does that take a vote of the commission to change the regular meeting date, council?
If it's just a direction, it just takes a consensus of the council, of the commission.
Marcia, is that correct?
If you're changing the regular meeting date, I would take a vote on that.
Okay.
Can I ask one more time? We're doing this because of position changes. Who are the positions changing potentially?
We have 5 commissioners who are, their terms end at the end of this year. So there could be a significant change in the commission.
But who's leaving? You're leaving?
Commissioner Frohnberger, Commissioner Mulhern.
Yeah, but chances are you'll be voted back in.
The thing is that the board decides our positions at the first meeting in January. So it's technically up in the air, but I would say not likely.
Who's chair? Who's going to be?
Mr. McCourty.
Well, he could put you both in.
Yeah, no, there's no way I'm letting Supervisor Mulhern off without protest by her.
So it seems like December 19th is the date we could act on today. It wouldn't meet the needs of our Point Arena commissioner. Could you still make it?
Oh, no, correction. I was just trying to give additional options.
Oh, okay.
Your Point Arena commissioner will be attending.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I would suggest we reschedule for December 19th.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have just a question for staff. So I think it sounds like December 19th would work, and what would need to be done in case the chambers aren't available? Could we just do the meeting remotely so that it doesn't hold up the process? At this point, is there anything preventing us from doing that?
I don't believe there's anything preventing us from a full remote meeting, although I'll rely on Marcia to clarify that. Another option would be that we could check availability at the Ukiah Valley Conference Center and hold the meeting in one of the conference rooms that they have there.
Well, I just would not like to see it delayed because the chambers aren't available. If there are other options and we can have that date, I think we should probably do that.
It is a public hearing that we're going to have on the 19th, correct?
Correct. It's a public hearing for consideration of both agencies' sphere
Yes.
updates.
So it's a major public, it would have to be here or the Ukiah Council Chambers, I would think.
Yeah,
You disagree?
we've been having remote meetings for 2 years. People know how to use Zoom. I mean, if it's available, then yes, let's do that. But just because it's a public hearing, I don't think it has to be physically in public.
No,
That's just my personal opinion.
The real big deal on a public hearing is making your notices.
Yeah.
And
legally.
especially if we're looking at changing dates.
And changing locations.
Well, we are meeting physically here today, and I don't see a lot of public in attendance.
It's a workshop, Chair, not a public hearing.
It's true, it is a workshop.
Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yes.
I move that the commission directs council to initially set up the 19th and also give council leeway to make the necessary adjustments for alternative locations and alternative dates as necessary.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Go ahead and do the roll call.
Commissioner Ignacio,
That's a yes.
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulhern,
Yes.
Commissioner Frohnberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
and Chair Orth.
Yes. Oh,
I think I was,
Ward.
I think.
Ward
my
and
vote.
Orth. I always hear Ward is Orth.
Mine's
Why
a
is
yes,
that?
too.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to 7B, new Brown Act rules for remote meetings. Good follow-up on our last discussion.
Thank you. This item starts on page 274 of our agenda packet. Our agency, along with many others, have been operating under the provisions of AB 361 that provides for alternate Brown Act meeting procedures during the declared state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier this month, Governor Newsom has declared that the termination of the emergency will be terminated as of February 18th of 2023. Sorry. He also signed into legislation AB 2449, which allows the option for holding continued remote meeting capabilities with specified limitations outside of a declared state of emergency. Some of those specifications are that a quorum of the commission must be present in person, that the in-person location be accessible to the public, and members may choose to participate remotely. They must request to do so beforehand and receive approval from the commission. They also must provide a reason, either by just cause or emergency circumstances, and those are identified and defined on page 275 of your agenda packet. Members teleconferencing must have both audio and visual technology and state for the record if anyone else is with them that is over the age of 18. Any one member is limited to 2 meetings per year and not more than 3 consecutive months in a calendar year. So this is an informational item to let the commission know that these will be the new rules that go into place March 1st of 2023. And we will bring it forward for further direction from the commission, most likely at our January meeting.
Are you suggesting we need an executive committee meeting to discuss how we would have commission approval of such moving forward? How would that work? Because we obviously won't meet as a commission to act on commissioners' requests to be on Zoom.
Correct. I do think that's a good item for the executive committee to discuss, and was going to request later on in the agenda under executive officer's report that we do schedule an executive committee meeting to discuss a number of things, including staffing changes and this item as well.
And I would note I'll not be in country for 3 weeks after the first week of January. I'll be back in the first week of February.
Oh, good. Okay.
Just make note. Yes.
Does it say here that if you miss 3 meetings in a row, you no longer can participate? Is that where I read, or is that something different?
I think Marcia might be able to, our counsel, Marcia, might be able to answer specific questions about this item.
Yeah.
There's a limitation on remote participation. It can't be more than 3 consecutive meetings. I do think there are some open questions here about what are the consequences of that occurring. There also is a provision that allows, there's a requirement that you request the remote attendance at the earliest possible time, but that can also be at the beginning of the meeting. Which suggests that someone could log into the meeting and say, I have a contagious illness, or one of the just cause items, and the commissioners could then vote at that particular moment. But I do think some of the logistics and some of the specifics about what are the consequences of, someone, for example, having a health issue that would mean that they would exceed these limitations on the number of either consecutive or just the number of remote attendance at meetings. So I do think there's a little bit more to flesh out here. And I will work with UMA. I've done a little research, and there are certainly a lot of attorneys who are researching this issue right now, and really trying to pick this language apart and try to figure out exactly how some of these rules are going to work. And I'll provide UMA with all of that information as I'm collecting it, so that when you have your executive session, she'll have that material to go over with you.
Okay, thank you.
Will we have to take our action in our meeting of February to set all that in stone? Is that like our drop dead date? Because by March we have to be meeting under those rules?
Yes. Yes, and in terms of, setting something in stone, I think you can develop a policy if you choose to do so, and adopt specific policies for handling this. And if you were to adopt a policy, then yes, I would say that would have to be in place before before March 1st.
And if we adopt such a policy, we could have that paragraph that says if this is not in agreement with state law, then it's null and void, that section.
Correct.
Is that what you do? Add the legal clause? Okay.
Yes, we could definitely include a provision there that says, I think what's going to happen is, as this is put into practice, probably glitches and wrinkles are going to come to light. To me, there are some items here that are less than crystal clear. So I do think that we may see this possibly even modified moving forward, but we need to be ready by March 1st to implement what's in place at the moment.
Thank you. Questions?
We got to watch our cancellations. We can't cancel 3 times during the year, because then it only goes down to 2 missing meetings. So I know we cancel at least twice a year, so we better watch that.
Well, we could also do calendar management when we approve our meeting calendar.
True.
Possibly.
All right.
Allow for an August recess,
So this will be before the executive committee?
Oh, vacations. Okay. Any further comments?
Not on this item, thank you.
So we'll work on scheduling an executive meeting, but we'll talk about it in the manager's report. So any questions from any members on the board or commissioners? Okay, then we'll move the agenda. Number 8, information and report items, starting with 8A, work plan, current and future proposals.
Thank you. This starts on page 277 of your agenda packet. We have, under active proposals, we have the City of Ukiah's annexation of Western Hills and the Elk Community Services District activation of latent powers for wastewater services. Those are both in process. Both are pending tax share agreements. We also have the City of Ukiah's annexation of city-owned properties, and that is also waiting for a tax share agreement, and all applications are incomplete at this time. There's been no activity on the other items of active proposals. Under potential future proposals, we have 3. We have the City of Ukiah out-of-area service agreement for wastewater services that was the city staff mentioned previously. We anticipate that in the next couple of months. We also are anticipating submittal of an application from the Anderson Valley Community Services District, who are proposing to annex their sphere of influence, and we expect that in the next couple of months as well. We've heard nothing new from the county regarding the CSA 3 activation of latent powers. There is our tables on page 280 and 281 of your agenda packet, providing updates on both the and potential future proposals, as well as the work plan status. And I have nothing to add unless there's questions.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to 8B correspondence.
We have no correspondence to note.
Then we'll move on to 8C, CALAFCO Business Legislative Report.
So we did do a brief legislative update on AB 2449 that was passed. SB 938, I think is the number, was also passed and signed by the governor, and we will include information on that in a future meeting. It does relate to LAFCO specifically regarding the protest thresholds for LAFCO-initiated projects. And Commissioner Mulhern was in attendance at the conference and can provide an update.
Time to report.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think it would be important to have an SB 983 update for the commission early next year, if that's possible, to get that on our agenda. There was a lot of discussion about fire district mergers and water district mergers, and I actually wrote down my favorite quote from the entire event, which was, "When you've seen one EMS system, you've seen one EMS system," from Walt White, the fire chief in Amador County. And I think that that was a really, something I took away from the entire conference, is that even though we're doing similar things throughout the state, we all have unique circumstances. So that was really important. The other thing that there were sessions on was on cessation planning, and I realized that we have an independent contractor that is our IED, but as far as bringing up future board members, to really invite people that have experience in planning, or at least have some type of understanding of the LAFCO process, I think is something that each of us as directors can start thinking about for individual boards, and certainly what the water districts and the municipalities should also really be thinking about, especially as we move forward, you know, with the funding that the state brings down to us, especially in rural communities. It's often so reliant on what the state needs, and because that's currently water district mergers and fire service, really making sure that our agencies are able to contribute to that, I think, is important.
I would make note that with elections tomorrow, there'll be some new faces, not just here, but in districts and cities throughout the county. It might be behoove us to send them an email, each elected, with a link to their agency's MSR, SOI reports. And that would open their eyes as to why LAFCO exists and what level of information they have available at their fingertips. To question, to add to, whatever. It would be a good opening education for city councils and districts to give to new electeds. It's partially why they exist, to inform not just the public, but us as decision makers, and I think it is a valued resource that gets too often not noticed. But we all put a lot of work into this, and I think it's to the benefit of people who come on to decision-making bodies to have that at hand and be aware of it. It would be informative to them. So that's just a suggestion.
I think it's a great idea. It's a good introduction to LAFCO and a broad overview of the agency they'll be serving. I think it's a great idea, and we'd be happy to do that outreach.
Yeah, it's just email links, so it won't be too hard. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
are you talking to me?
Yes.
Mari?
Mari, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. On this subject, I've been thinking today that I think a LAFCO 101 for our commission is due, just to refresh the commissioners on our roles and responsibilities, and maybe we could plan on something in the first quarter of next year when and if we have new commissioners on board. Maybe we could have a special 3-hour session that our staff leads us through.
Seems to me that we do have that. I remember going through it.
We do.
Do we have it locally, or is it through CalAFCO?
Here
We-
local.
We do.
Well,
it
I was
locally.
thinking we could have our own in-house one, but I think it would be nice for, instead of doing it independently, that we do it as a group, and then we, if we have a question about how things work or our responsibilities, it's sort of it might be related to a local issue, and so it would benefit everybody on the commission to hear the answer to questions like that. But just based on what I heard today, I think there may be some confusion or about our roles and responsibilities.
And the fact that a commissioner acts for all the citizens within Mendocino County, not just for their agency, is a critical point to make as commissions are seated, LAFCO commissions are seated, and I think it leads to resolves like we had here today. The more we stress that we're all working in a community together, reviewing a lot of 1,000-word packets. It's a lot of work. But there's a reason behind it, and that's where it gets us all working together for our communities. Yes,
Yeah.
Matt.
Back to Mari's comment. Yes, we do one in-house, and I think at least 2 or 3 of us did it last year. We planned it and had it run following a regular board meeting for new board members, as well as it was open to current board members to attend as well to refresh.
Mr. Ward.
Yes, thank you. Another suggestion that an EO previous to UMA, maybe previous to one before that, suggested the commissioners, and I did attend a few of them, that we attend different board meetings throughout the county. Go to a water district meeting, go to the sand district meeting, or go to a fire district meeting and participate, or listen anyway, and get the input from them as to what, a lot of people don't know what LAFCO does, obviously, and so that was something that we did in the past. Now, I'm not retired yet, but there's some, maybe people have more time than me to go to more meetings, but I think it's important that we as LAFCO commissioners go out there in the community and see what these board members are talking about and how it affects them through LAFCO.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but expect to see some very astonished faces. When at the meetings that I attended, they were quite stunned that somebody from LAFCO was sitting in, and they were equal anticipation of concern and gratitude, so be advised.
So wear a flak jacket, huh?
Smile, just a smile.
Okay, let's go on to 8D, Executive Officer's Report.
Thank you. The fiscal year 2021-22 financial reports have been completed and reviewed by Treasurer Ward. Thank you, Treasurer Ward. And were sent off to our CPA in early October. I don't have a timeline for when we should receive a draft yet, but I am working with him on that, and hopefully in the next couple of months. An update on commissioner terms. The special district election ends this Friday. As a reminder, we've received 3 nominations for 2 seats, 1 nomination for the alternate, which is Francois Kristen from Anderson Valley CSD. He is automatically appointed per statute. However, he was also nominated for the regular seat, as well as Candace Horsley from the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. So the deadline for the ballots is this Friday. The election statutes require that we have at least a quorum of ballots received from the special districts. At this time, we are still short 9 ballots. So if we don't receive enough, a quorum by the end of Friday, we will have to extend the deadline for the ballots. So if you know special districts out there who have not yet voted, please encourage them to do so and send it in by Friday. The notice of new term for the public member was announced in the newspapers, sent to our member agencies, and also posted on our website. We received one application by the October 28th deadline, and that was Commissioner Ward.
Only because there's no other applicants.
So we will bring that forward with the results of the special district election at our next commission meeting. And then finally, I want to announce that we do have a staffing change coming up. Our clerk, Kristen Meadows, has accepted a career advancement and will be leaving us. Her last day will be November 14th. And she's worked for Hinman and Associates Consulting on our LAFCO team since 2018, and she's been a valuable member of that team, and I want to wish her all the best, and thank you, Kristen, so much for all that you've done on our team and for the commission in particular. And as an
Any
item,
farewell comments you might wish to make?
I just wanted to say thank you to the commission and to Uma and to Larkin for all of your guidance and your help, and for this wonderful opportunity. I've learned so much about my hometown, and I think it's
Kristen, we'll miss our meetings at the Talmadge Market to sign checks.
In the Safeway parking lot. Okay.
we will add the discussion about staffing changes on our executive committee meeting, which we'll be reaching out to you and hope to schedule after the Thanksgiving holiday.
Is it possible to hold it on the same day as our the 19th meeting?
That is a possibility. We can look at doing that, too. Yeah.
That would help.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Even though we'll move to our office or whatever.
Thank you. And I have nothing else further for the executive officer report.
Thank you. Were there any other committee reports? I imagine the executive committee might launch other committees into the product that we're creating.
Yeah, there were no other committee meetings at this time, and we'll send out a draft of the previous meeting. It's been a while, so to refresh your memory in advance of the agenda for the executive committee.
I'm just thinking in January you might need a policies and procedures meeting to follow up our executive meeting.
Yes, excellent point. Thank you.
Okay. With that, commissioner reports, comments, or questions? Everyone happy with today's meeting then? No? Okay.
Wouldn't say that.
Well, I thought today's meeting went well. I agree. So I think it kind of historic in a way. So I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in December. And with that, motion to adjourn. Needing no second.
Make that motion.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.